If you haven't already done so, can I ask you all please to sign in on the chat, just name and club, please. We've only got 15 on at the moment. I'll give it a couple more minutes and then we'll crack on. And if anyone else comes on, they can join in. Okay, we don't seem to be flooded with people arriving. So I think we should just crack on. Tim, can I just ask you to sign in on the chat, please? Just name and club, just so we've got a record of everyone who's here. I think everyone's on mute, so I'll try and keep everyone there just to avoid feedback and the like. If you would like to speak, if you could either please raise your hand electronically or wave frantically at the screen, but if we do get up to more participants, then I won't have everyone on one screen, so I may not see you. So if you raise your hand electronically, you go straight up to the top of the queue. I wanted to start, firstly, thanks for coming on. This is number 3 of 4, and we've had some interesting feedback so far. Wanted to just start, please, with some general feedback on how you felt that the season came together. Not your necessarily cricket performances, but just in terms of communication, organisation, and so on. And for anyone that was OCA, have we got anyone? Oh yeah, we've Chris from Kidlington. And if not, good. Any of the teams that came from the old OCA, any comments, thoughts, inputs, anything that you think we might be or might be useful to us, so we'd be interested to hear. So over to you. Anyone like to kick us off? No, all happy?
Yeah, I think from my side, so this is Chris at Kidlington here.
Hi, Chris.
Generally, I think generally most of the club was excited about joining the Cherwell League, particularly the younger guys. But I've only played for the club for 6-7 years. Obviously, I wasn't around with all the history when we used to play. But I think we've really enjoyed playing in the Cherwell League this year, and look forward to next year. We've obviously had some success. Second team being promoted, I think. First team mid-table. Third team struggled this year. I mean, probably something we can talk about later, but rather than talk about performance as such, but just with the structure, and they came up against some strong sides that they had the last time they played in the OCA. So, I mean, it's a developmental side, but on the whole, we've really enjoyed playing in the Cherwell League, and and I say that's like 98% of the club would share that. So yeah, thanks for having us.
You're welcome. Happy.
Yeah, I'd agree from Middleton Cheney as well, Ian. In the main, the players have enjoyed it. They've enjoyed playing new teams, some more local clubs. We've had a few players return because of the reduced travelling. Obviously, stuck out where we are, it's made a big difference. So in the main, it's the club have seen it as a success and something that we really wanted to do.
Excellent.
Thank you for having us.
No, not at all. Tim.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I think the feedback from our players would be overwhelmingly positive. There were some challenges that I think we can probably talk through later on the call, but overall, I think we found our first season in the Cherwell League to be a very positive one. I think the committee are to be commended for putting it all together. A very complicated system in a very short period of time. Things tend to work. The main positive from our point of view was that we found the three leagues that we were in to be competitive and there to be a quite consistent standard across the league,
Okay.
Which is good. Sometimes we competed well, sometimes we didn't, but we appreciated the standard. In terms of one piece of feedback, I think our umpires felt a little bit underprepared. So whilst from a player's perspective, we could lean on our captains to explain the new rules and regs and what that meant, for our umpires, they were like the go-to people, right, as panel umpires. And I think there was some very significant differences between the OCA and the Cherwell, both big and subtle. And I think they found the first few weeks tough and kind of grew into it.
Okay. Good. Anyone else want to chip in there? So happy to stop there while everyone's happy. Okay, great. Thank you for that. Obviously, this was the first time that within the Cherwell, I think, or for the OCA, that we were able to regionalise. And regionalisation has come up in most of the meetings. I'd have to say, for the most part, it's been appreciated and enjoyed. There have been some comments, though, that the more regionalised we are, the more siloed we become, if you like. We end up playing the same clubs all the time. So there was a suggestion that perhaps we should de-regionalise a little bit and go back to 2 divisions. That's not met with overwhelming support, but just want to put it out there. But again, just wanted to get your thoughts on, should we be trying to regionalise more, trying to regionalise a bit less, or do you think we're about in the right place? I think for the the Oxford-based clubs, it probably doesn't make a huge amount of difference because you're either going one direction or the other. Russell.
Yeah, I think we wouldn't like to see any sort of movement away from regionalisation in the lower divisions, because obviously that's where it has the biggest impact. And I think as particularly our third team, who were sort of in a division with sort of Wolverton and Buckingham, they really struggled, and we had more than once where we had a surplus of players who could play at home and a deficiency that could play away on those weeks. So I certainly wouldn't like to see it move away from that in those. It's less significant, obviously, in the higher divisions. But again, particularly, I think our second team particularly enjoyed the league they were in. It worked very well. So.
That's that. Barry.
Yeah, I'll just echo those comments really, Ian. Particularly lower down, I think it's really key. Our second team, we're trying to blood lots of youngsters, and if they've got to travel an hour to then play a 40-over game and an hour back, it puts some of them off, or perhaps puts the parents off that are taking them. So particularly lower levels where we're trying to blood youngsters, the regionalisation has really helped us. We're not at a massively high standard, obviously, at 5 and 8. And I think our first team enjoyed the regionalisation as well. We did have a lot of very local games, which added a bit to it, I think, because most people knew each other who they were playing around the town and what have you. So they really enjoyed it. Can appreciate why some may not want that. But from our point of view as a first season in it, we really saw the benefits of it.
Okay. Jimmy.
Oh yeah, regionalisation was great. Thought it was a great idea. Worked very well, echoing the things of playing locally and knowing people. Our twos really enjoyed it. I think it was great for them, for the less travel and stuff. My only thing would be, obviously, being in 5B, we're at that point where the relegation and promotion, obviously we finished second. It's that pinch point of, our league was very competitive and teams, which was great. Anyone could beat anyone on their day. But I just thought the other two potentially were, there was runaway teams in it, which hopefully with next season and like them going up, we'll have a more balanced, so that promotion becomes a little bit, more of a target. Because we looked at ours and we finished second, 40 points behind the other two that had more points than us in second place, but they were 40 points clear or 25 points clear of third places in their leagues.
Yeah, I'll touch on this a bit later as well, because we've got a bit of breaking news for you on that. But we always knew that this first season would be a little bit hit and miss in terms of standard, and that was the reason initially that we suggested doing a 3 up, 3 down in order to try and get that fixed quicker. I mean, not only was it 2 leagues where we weren't necessarily familiar with all the teams, but we were also 2 years out from the last competitive leagues. And as you all know, it doesn't matter how good or bad you are, you can have a massive change in 1 year. To have it across the course of 2 years, a team that looked like the best team in the division 2 years ago might be struggling to stay in it the following years, 2 years later. But I'll come back to that a bit later on, because we've got a bit of news to share with you on that. But I think your opinions on it seem to pretty much echo what we've had in the first 2 meetings. I think there's all general approval for it. So, sort of slightly related to that, start times. Now, we've had a little bit of discussion on start times. Any strong thoughts in either direction? Happy with where we are at the moment? Stephen?
Yeah, I'm at Sanford, and we've had a few, especially towards the top one with our first team are in Division 2. Some of our players would rather an earlier start, but then I know that as you get down into the lower leagues, our second team, where you've got probably a few more parents and a few more commitments down there, and it's not just the cricket, they prefer the later start. I say it makes no massive difference, but that's just the opinions of our setup there.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that, Tim.
You know, the higher up
sorry.
you go, the earlier you start, isn't it? So I suppose when you've got those people trying to get to that home counties level in 1 and 2, it's potential preparation for something like that. But
yeah, I mean, to be honest, the principal reason for the earlier start in the higher leagues is that they play more overs. So we're basically looking to get them finished around the same time at sort of 7:30. So it's kind of work back from there. Jim?
Yeah, so I think we have a general comment which can be applied across multiple things, including start times. So our context comes from the fact that we've got 3 teams not too far apart each other in the structure, really. We're a club of mediocre cricketers. No one that good, no one that bad. So the thing for us is around the rule differences between these different levels. We would like to see it simplified wherever possible. So not necessarily uniform. We understand there needs to be levels, but where it can be simplified, I think there would be benefit. So for example, us having first team playing at one time, second and thirds playing at a different time, and then the times all shifting in the last 2 weeks meant there was potential for confusion and players got confused. Actually, what time it started, 12, 12:30, 1, 1:30, we actually couldn't care less. If it was more memorable for our players, that would be our vote.
Okay, cool.
So Tim, are you advocating that there's just one start time across all the divisions and they just finish at different times?
I don't think it's going to be possible to have exactly the same rules across formats, across all divisions. I think that would be a bad idea. But I think where there are differences, I think there should be a clear reason and there should be fewer of them. So whether it's start time, whether it's other things, I don't know. But let's just put a line through as many differences as we can, would be our vote. If the start times are still different, that's okay, but maybe we can simplify in some other areas.
Yeah, that was brought up last Wednesday, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else on start times? Yeah, Jimmy.
Just a question from quick one from our twos. Our twos think with the lower leagues, everyone should like start at the same time. Like even so, the ones start half an hour early. If the twos would start, then they could potentially get back to the clubhouse and see the ones finishing up, or you know, at the minute with them starting that half hour later. If you know, as you say, just simplify it to have one start time. All games start at this time, whether it's reduced overs or not. It gives the away team a little bit more time to get back.
Unless the away teams unless the lower overs are at home and the higher overs are away.
Yeah, but it's just that.
Yeah,
that's what I was just thinking.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Okay. Any more on that? Or no? Okay, we'd like to just touch on cups. Now, we were very aware as a committee that we kind of threw the cups together quite quickly because there was so much other stuff to be done. And we got, I think in the circumstances, a reasonable take up on it. And there were a few forfeits, but for the most part, certainly as the cups progressed, they turned into good competitions. Any thoughts on what we ought to be doing with cups? Could something to make it work better? Is it something your club's not interested in? Steve?
I think I played for Coombe in the OCA a few years ago. I thought you did the right thing with the cups this year. I think giving with no OCA sides going above 4 or 3, I can't remember which one it was, but to give them the opportunity to win the Airy Cup this year was the right decision, and it was shown in the final. It was a great final. We would, as a first team in Division 2, we would enjoy playing in a cup competition if that were on offer further down the line.
Okay, look, that's one of the subheadings I've got under cups is, do we want a cup for Tier 1 and 2 teams? So we can sense your willingness for that then. Anyone else on cups? Rupert. I think you're on mute, Rupert. You need to unmute, Rupert.
Apologies.
There we are.
We entered one of the cups for our third straight fourth, and completely forgot we'd entered and didn't actually fulfill the fixture. I think it's quite a good idea. I just wondered if playing it that early in the season was the right thing to do. I just thought later on in the season, when availability is probably better, it would make more sense. But if they went successfully, I probably got it wrong again.
Well, I think ideally we'd like more clubs to enter it, but as I say, we threw it together fairly kind of late in the day, and I think we've got the opportunity now to look at what might produce more interest in it, and get a higher entry level. I think the other factor is when we can start depends to some extent on how many we've got. So if you've got 5-6 rounds, then we will have to start early. If it's a 4-round cup, then probably we can start it in the beginning of July, something like that. Okay, yeah, one second. We've got Barry.
Yeah, I think you've done a good job with the cups here, and like you say, at very short notice. Just the comment from us, we didn't enter our second team this year, and it proved the right decision in the end. With it being a Sunday, you always struggle for some people to be available, which then means if your first team is struggling, a few of your second team players play in that, and then they're not eligible to play in the second team cup, which is why I think you might see a few second, third, and fourth teams not entering, and some of the higher teams maybe entering. But no, I think you've done a good job at, let's say, short notice, and it's great that they've continued, and people have got the chance to play if they want to.
Okay, good. Tim?
Yeah, not much to add. Grateful that the cups happened. I think the risk to the future of the cup competitions, if there was a gap year, was significant. So we're glad that they took place. We got knocked out quite early, so I can't really comment on how successful they were. We needed to bat better, but glad they happened. I think we care greatly about the cup's future, and so we would advocate some thoughtful discussion around how to make them as strong as possible and how to safeguard them. I'm not exactly sure what the answer is, but for example, I definitely think it's a myth, I don't think anyone's under the illusion that Sunday availability is the same as Saturday. So the fact that you've got 3 Saturday teams doesn't mean you can have 3 Sunday teams.
Yeah, sure.
So I think it might be more around moving cups to be at a club level rather than at a team level, and finding where you sit in that structure might depend upon the mix of where your teams are. Certainly, if we are going to give teams the opportunity to enter 2 teams into cup competitions, then the games definitely shouldn't take place on the same day, because getting 22 players out on a Sunday is near impossible for almost everybody. So that spooked us a little bit when those fixtures came out. And there should be discussion. I'm not sure which side of the fence I sit on, but I think there should be discussion around having some kind of league or pool stage. So it's not a case of direct knockout. I say that because having confidence around what your Sunday fixtures are going to look like means you can then plan to do other things with more certainty, whether that be women's cricket or friendly cricket or what have you. When it's direct knockout, you don't know whether you're going to be playing 4 or 5 games or one game, and that can complicate things a bit.
Okay. Russell?
Yeah, I mean, our experience is that our third and fourth teams were much keener on the cup competitions than our first and second teams were. So what would have suited us was the ability to go in at a lower tier, rather than not have a team in the sort of the tier 3 level, and go in at a lower level. That might be just us, but that was the experience we had. So we ended up putting quite a weak team in against a much stronger team in the level that we went in at.
Okay. Pretty much everybody's had a crack on that. Right, we get into the meatier stuff now. Balls, as in cricket balls. We obviously had a dual situation this year. We were conscious that OCA clubs would have stock of the Hampton ball, which was the OCA League ball. The Charlotte League clubs had stock of the Buckingham ball, which had been our previous league ball. So we went with all clubs from tiers 1 to 5 playing with the Buckingham compulsorily. There were 1 or 2 instances where that didn't happen, but more by accident than design. And choices in the lower tiers for clubs to use, providing they use the same two or the same ball in each innings. Now, obviously, some clubs will have not had experience of the Hampton, some will have not had experience of the Buckingham before this year. Just looking to get some feedback. We've been contacted by Tiflex, who manufacture both balls, and our 3-year contract has come to an end this season. So they're very keen to nail us down for another 3 years if possible. Obviously, the leagues having joined together, we are now quite a hefty purchaser. Our order for this year was ballpark £55,000. So that makes us quite an inviting customer for them. So we want to just get your feedback on the 2 balls, positive or negative, what you thought, what you'd like to see going forward.
Hi Ian, it's Paul from Long Marston.
Hi Paul.
Feedback we had, especially from the first team, was the quality of the balls was not very good this year.
Okay.
And that, not just our first team, that was through chats with other captains that we were playing against. Just felt that, I think when we first had the Tiflex balls, they were a really good ball, but we just feel that the quality has gone down over the past few seasons.
Okay.
And that was from quite a few captains.
Okay, thank you. Russell?
Sorry, I don't think it wasn't mentioned. I haven't heard it mentioned, the quality of the ball, so don't have anything to feedback on
Okay.
that point.
Cool. Okay, thank you. Chris?
We've had a little bit of feedback. I think what we have found is that the balls, so we've been using the Buckingham ball, Div 5C. We found that it scuffs very quickly. I don't know, it's the lacquer that's, I think on the whole, the ball's kind of stayed as one piece. The seam has been in good condition generally, but we found they scuff very quickly. And I guess because we've been limited in terms of being able to shine the ball, it's been very difficult to kind of, as a bowler myself, it's been difficult to get any assistance. But I think on the whole, I'd say the seam seems good quality, and the ball's kind of held up. We're not having any balls falling apart as such. Just that the finish of the ball tends to go very quickly. We've noticed, and I would say more so than the Hampton ball that we've been used to playing with in the OCA. But yeah, no major concerns with the ball, but just some maybe premature surface damage. We've noticed within the first, fairly significant within the first 10 overs, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. Rupert?
Feedback from our guys who play with the Buckingham ball. It's not just this season that standard has been poor. They've felt the last 2 or 3 years it's been not as good as when they first started using them.
Okay.
They all feedback that's really difficult to get any shine on it, and it's unlike sort of like Duke's ball, which we use in home counties, where they're still in good neck after sort of 60 overs. You can still shine them up, you can still use them. So I don't know what you can do about it. I've no idea whether they can actually supply an alternative ball for similar sort of costs. I don't know. You guys are the ones speaking to Flex.
Yeah, typically you find that you can get the cost down, but then they make a ball to that cost. So it's we're probably in quite a strong position this year. So we're about to restart negotiating a longer term contract, and it may well be that we get a better ball for the first year than we perhaps expected. But okay, I mean these are all really important comments for us to be able to take forward, to speak to them and say we've got some concerns here or there. So yeah, thanks for that. Barry.
Just a little bit of feedback from our guys in. The Cherwell balls, the Buckingham ones, were felt to be better than the old OCA ones for players that played in both. The bowlers were never happy, but that's bowlers anyway. But we felt that the Cherwell balls did last longer and held the shape and etc. a bit better than the others.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Jimmy?
I thought the balls were pretty good. They're, in our opinion, they're better than the Hamptons. I think that one of the big issues was obviously not being able to shine the ball. I know with obviously the rules and stuff, there was allowed no stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I think going next season, I think they'll be fine. We didn't have any major issues with them. It was just the thing of shining them.
Yeah, I think it's something to get used to as well, because the Hampton ball is a lacquered ball and the Buckingham is a waxed ball. Now the wax does tend to come off a little quicker than the lacquer, which means you get to the leather quicker. And if you work it and look after the ball, it can be properly shone up and last. But as you say, certainly the last 2 seasons, we've not really had the opportunity to work on the ball properly, which does have an impact. But, okay, excellent. Yeah, I think we've been through everyone on that one. Okay. Now here's one to whet your appetite, literally. Teas. What do we think about teas? Just to set context, I think we expect that all restrictions will be gone by the time we restart next year, but then we did kind of think that this time last year. But, and so there is the possibility to reinstate teas. Now, all I would say before taking feedback is teas are not a rule in the Cherwell League, it's a convention. Because of the COVID restrictions, we had to come in and say, you must not provide teas for various reasons. And it's sparked a considerable amount of thought and debate from clubs about whether it's a thing they would like to do going forward. Someone said, "Do you know what, this works quite nicely, having people bring their own food." Others was saying, "Oh, missing cricket teas terribly." So, Rupert, I think you had your hand up and then back down again. Do you want to kick off? Yep, you're on mute again. Yep, still on mute, Rupert.
Feedback from our players, they would prefer to carry on without clubs providing tea.
Okay.
They felt that by each individual providing tea, you actually eat what you want to eat. Those who have got food allergy can actually cater for themselves. Those who are, Muslim guys can again cater for themselves. And if you look at this season when we had lots and lots of rainy days, there would be a lot of wastage, and I just personally think it doesn't make it a better game of cricket. It's all about playing cricket and not about, what you're going to have for tea.
Okay, thank you. Jimmy?
As a club, we think teas are a great idea. It's another way for other people to get involved in the cricket club. We're quite lucky that we have a couple of ladies in the village who would do our teas, and it's a way of getting them involved and then getting their partners involved and their children, and it sort of brings the community together. We feel as a club.
Okay.
That's just us as a personal view of our club.
Yeah. I mean, you're not the first to bring that one up. Yeah. Barry?
Ours is mainly in favour of not having teas. It's a bit of a mix of sort of the more old school want the teas and the younger ones don't. But we've got more younger ones playing who felt that, like Rupert touched on, if they've got allergies, they can actually eat what they want. The other one was they can eat when they want, not at said time. So if they're batting or bowling, they can eat as and when they want. And just from a club perspective, it's something else we haven't got to get a volunteer for. But from a personal point of view, I fully appreciate the good teas at cricket. But I think from a player's point of view, the majority were to stay as it was.
Okay. Tim?
I think this is going to end up quite a thorny one, because I think you can hear that views amongst clubs are quite split. From our point of view, we don't have regular tea volunteers, so preparing teas from a committee perspective is a pain in the bum.
Yeah.
Despite this, the overwhelming majority of our players miss them and would vote in favour of bringing teas back, probably on the basis that they wouldn't volunteer to do it themselves. I think Rupert's points around different dietary requirements and allergies and stuff is a really well made point, and that might be lost a little bit in just a vote of the majority. So I think we should be sensitive to that. I think my word of caution is there might be a temptation when clubs are split on this to come down to let clubs do what they want. I worry that might be not a good idea, because we will end up with confusion, not only for visiting teams as to whether they should be bringing teas or not, but also for umpires, where some weeks they would need to bring it and some weeks they wouldn't. So I don't know where this takes us. If I'm speaking on behalf of our players, I would say, yeah, let's bring teas back. If I was on the committee, what I would probably do is do something like mandate that home teams are responsible for providing both hot and cold drinks for everybody, but food is bring your own. And then if teams want to do their own teas for their home side or whatever, they're obviously able to do that, but away teams should have the expectation they're bringing their own food.
I think your point about confusion is an important one, and hence the reason we want to try and get either a majority or consensus view on this, because we don't want to be in a situation of saying, well, you know, do your own thing. We want to be in a position of saying, Cherwell League, we provide teas, or Cherwell League, we do not provide teas. And you know, if it's that we don't, then Sundays are the day that you think about providing teas and making arrangements with clubs and so on. But we would look to go one way or the other, not leave you hanging somewhere in the middle.
Oh,
Russell,
and as a PS, I should have said and forgot to say, if we think about the umpiring community as well as the playing community,
Yeah.
I wonder if the umpiring community might vote more strongly in favour of having teas. And if we think there's a bit of a issue in terms of the number of volunteers we're getting for umpiring, both now and in the future, that might be a voice we might need to listen to.
Yeah. Interestingly, at our club, we did a straw poll on it, and we took a vote, and it was a majority in favour of retaining teas. And then we redid the vote on the basis that if you vote in favour, you are de facto volunteering to do a tea, at which point the vote went the other way. Russell, I've got a hand from you.
Yeah, no, I think you've just summed up where it is. I think, yes, the people who want them are not the people who are prepared to do them. And so in the last few years, when we were providing teas, we were doing it through a local bakery. And they sort of just met a lowest common denominator. It cost us quite a lot of money, and it was a very average tea. So I think, I don't think we'd go forward on that basis, given the administration that's involved. Sort of all in all, I think we'd be on the no tea side of things, but recognising the fact that some people really like it, but you know they're not prepared to do it.
Okay. Chris?
I think I've echoed some of the points made already, particularly with umpires. I think as a club, we're probably about 60-40 in terms of being in favour of bringing teas back. We have quite, like a lot of clubs, we have quite a diverse kind of age range. Although it's not primarily the younger guys that, would rather just have their own tea. I think, we're a little bit on the fence, but... and we have the challenges that most clubs have of doing teas. I know that I think the season before last, some of our teas, we actually went and bought sandwiches, and actually that worked out. Although it cost us a little bit more, it was a bit more convenient, and having a rota obviously helps. But I think there was a comment on one of the other forums last week about one club that actually just offers like tea and coffee, I think, and maybe tea and like cake as well. I think some kind of sweets. I don't know. I think I was, I can't remember which YouTube video it was, but I think there was a comment about that. But yeah, as I say, probably 60-40 in favour of teas. But yeah, I'd agree that some of the people that want teas potentially wouldn't be prepared to help, make them. So
yeah, okay.
That may change slightly.
Barry?
Yeah, it's just a point that I forgot really, Ian, and it was when Russell touched on it about the quality of teas. That was one of the big pieces of feedback from our players, was that the quality of teas these days is so mixed. They'd rather go without them, because you can go to some places and have a really good one, but because clubs are struggling to get volunteers, majority of the time it's not great, and they were then a bit begrudgingly paying the money for something they didn't enjoy or didn't want to eat, or going to buy their own food anyway, in some places. So that was a real big piece of feedback that we had that I'd forgotten.
Okay, cool. Thanks for that. Yeah, I think we've had everybody on that one there. I think similar to the previous forums, there's a kind of split, although I sense a slightly more, as we progress, a slightly more resigned to the fact that it's possibly not the most practical thing in the world. And the other factor I think that's come in is cost. That if you're providing a tea, you're probably costing 50 quid a game for your 9 home games, whereas that cost just kind of evaporates off to the players if you're not having to do it. So Okay, thanks for that. A couple of slightly left field suggestions that came in. One team clubs are currently restricted in the setup to tier 5. We haven't yet had anyone complain that they ought to be able to go higher. There were a couple of first team clubs that forfeited in tier 5 this year, and the principal reason for not going above tier 5 is because we did not want to be in a position where there were forfeits above that level. Someone has suggested that they shouldn't be allowed in tier 8 either. They should be allowed in 7 and 6 and 5, but not in tier 8. And I think someone referred earlier to one of the tier 8 leagues where one of the two or three of the teams ran away with the division. Any strong opinions on one team clubs? I'm not sure if we've got any one team clubs on the call.
Yeah, and I think we had a slight issue with a certain club, that a one team club who went quite a low division, because they've been very competitive playing in Division 4 against us, and they for some reason not put in a very low division. We thought that was a bit strange.
Yes, I know to whom you refer. That was a very particular set of circumstances where the club was about to fold at one point. And at that point, the predominant players that were left were from their second team, and so asked to play at their second team level. I think we kind of expected that even their second team with 3 or 4 first team players was always going to be strong. But rather than try and second guess it and put them somewhere in between, we kind of went, well, it's going to have to be one or the other. And it was clear that if they'd been in Division 4, they'd have been taken to pieces. But in Division 7, they found it reasonable. Well, I mean, they didn't win the league, but they're gone now. So part of that kind of sort out process.
Yeah, I think we understand it's going to take a few years. We just thought there was some, looking at some of the scores every week, there were some very, very one-sided games this year.
Yeah, no, I had to play in one of those. Thank you very much.
So we played in many. So, but yeah, no, it was just a comment. We understand that it's going to take time to sort itself out. But
Chris, is that a new hand up or?
Yeah, there it is. I think we have been on. So I'd probably refer to our third team, even when we played in the OCA. There has been a few new sides that have come in, or sides where the structure of the club has changed. I'm not going to name any sides, but they've come in and clearly been far too strong for the division, and our third 11's been on the side of where the opposition's scoring 350 or so, and we're getting bowled out for less than 100. I think with all we understand as a club that whilst our third 11's had quite a tough season, we haven't won a game, and we've drawn one. And I mentioned earlier we've come up against a couple of sides where when we were in the OCA, those were sides where they had say their first 11 was playing Division 1 or Division 2, and then they've got just one other side which is playing down at the bottom of the structure, and we've obviously struggled to compete against them. But I think that I say some feedback from our club was that, particularly our third 11s, that they would like to have a bit more of a one suggestion was having kind of a Division 8, 9 and 10 rather than having the tiers. But we understand that trying to get every club and every team in the right division and tier this year is obviously going to always be challenging. There's always going to be some teams that for example, in 5C division that I played in, Hendred have obviously run away with the division, and whilst the rest of the teams have been pretty competitive, second, third, and fourth, I think we were fourth in the end. We're all within a few points of each other. On the whole, the structure's been, there's not been too many sides where that's happened, but I think, as I say, being on the receiving side in the past with our third 11, when we've had new sides come in at the bottom, let's say Division 8, and obviously been clearly too good for that division. It's it's difficult to know, I guess. If it's a club that you haven't come across before or played in the past, it's difficult to know the standard and whether, you know, they should go in at the bottom tier or go in a few tiers up. I don't know. It's not an easy answer, but
it's always a tricky conundrum to solve. I mean, as a general principle in the channel, we don't necessarily bring new clubs in at the bottom tier or the bottom division. Normally, we would have a track record from them from whatever division they had played in previously, and I wouldn't go as far as to say it was a formula or an algorithm, but we have a clue that, you know, for example, if you won the OCA 3 years ago and wanted to come across the Cherwell, you would probably come in Division 5. You would be competitive in 5. You might even win 5. But what we found was, as the years went by, each new one that came in made less and less dramatic progress. So they were finding their level around 5-4. It is trickier at the moment because not only do we not necessarily understand the levels of teams that are coming in, we don't actually understand our own levels quite yet. Although I think you said 1 or 2 teams ran away at the top. Interestingly, there of the 14 divisions above tier 8, in 13 of them, 1 team was clearly adrift. I think there was 1 division that was a bit competitive at the bottom, but other than that, 1 team was clearly adrift. That would suggest that we're getting close to reasonably competitive divisions. But new clubs always mess you up, and sometimes you just get 3 or 4 players moved from one club to another club, and that completely changes the balance. So over time, it'll start to sort itself out, hopefully.
Can I just add a bit about Hendred? They were actually one of the top seeded sides in Tier 5, so we'd expect them to be very competitive. Additionally, they've got a few youngsters that are getting better. So, you know, hopefully they'll find their level in a year or so.
Yeah, I think they were in fact the highest ranked side not to make it into Tier 4.
Yeah, okay. And to us, we expected them to be good because we were in Division 3 2019 and they're in Division 1, and we expected, you know, to have a couple of sides in 5C that, you know, we expected to be strong, you know, with difficult games for us. So you know, but yeah, I think on the whole, I think we were happy with the structure, and, you know, we felt you did a good job as best you could with, you know, trying to manage and you know, even out the divisions and the level and so on.
Okay. So that one was slightly out of left field, 1 team clubs, but right, let's get into the meaty stuff. Leg side wides. What do we think? Have we got the rules right? Should we not care? Stephen?
Towards the top of the league, I don't think they should be taken out in win, lose, draw. We think that you're playing, although you can draw cricket, we're still playing 1-day cricket, and it's a good test of our bowlers to bowl straight. We often find we have a couple of weeks either side of it where it messes them all up. And it's easier to have one all the way through. And I think the standard of cricket should be with leg side wides.
Okay. Rupert?
I was asked to actually mention this by our 4th team captain, who felt win, lose, draw cricket, it shouldn't be there. They play in Division 8 and just felt it prolonged the game and made it too difficult for some of the youngsters they brought in.
Okay. In win, lose, draw, particularly in the lower tiers, a leg side ball is not necessarily a wide.
They felt that there was too many variation in terms of who was umpiring, and felt it was too difficult to actually make the game move forward. You know, it's just like taking too long because there's too many wides.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay. Barry?
It's more around lower division cricket, really, Ian. I think at the top it needs to stay. I think I umpired a couple of games in Division 8, played in a couple as well. And if the umpires would have been to the letter of the law, would have been there till it was dark on a couple of occasions. So the umpires did take a view in having spoken to the captains. But I think particularly Division 8 and the bottom divisions, it does need a bit of a review or give the umpires some leeway, because otherwise the games just go on too long. With all the will in the world, they can try and bowl straight, but they're playing in Division 8 and the likes for a reason.
Yeah, okay. Right. Tim.
Yeah, just to reiterate what others have said. Our first team bowled 1 million wides this season. I think we must have broken some kind of world record, but I don't blame the Charwell League for that. We needed to bowl straighter, and at that standard, I think the rules were spot on, and I think the umpires have applied the rules correctly. At the lower leagues, where the likes of me were playing, what I saw was that the umpires were essentially applying their own rules and not really following what the guidance was coming. It's a broad statement. That wasn't the case every single week, but a lot of weeks they were using their own judgment. And so what that meant was I saw very little difference between the win-lose and win-lose-draw weeks. I thought the umpires were essentially interpreting it in roughly the same way. And the leg side rule wasn't really being applied in the lower divisions. And maybe, as per some of the comments, maybe that was a good thing, because maybe the games would have gone on too long. But I think it's the right question to ask, but you might want to ask the umpires as to what their perspective on it is and why they decided to do something different from was the guidance.
But the guidance below tier 5 was, even in win-lose, was that the umpire should adopt profile wides. Not every ball down the leg side is a wide, for exactly the reason that was stated, that we don't want to be there at 9 o'clock at night trying to bowl out for 5th over.
Yeah, sorry. To be clear on my point, I thought the profile wide guidance was really quite clear.
Yeah.
They weren't giving profile wides. It would have to generally be really quite wide on the leg side for it to be called most
Right.
weeks.
Okay. Oh, that's the shortest discussion we've had on wide so far. Good.
Yeah, and I'd just like to say, I think at the higher levels, I agree. We need to keep probably leg side wides for both the cricket. I found some weeks in the win-lose, balls are wide, and then a week later it's gone in the same place and it's not a wide.
Okay.
I think it doesn't help the umpires at all. I think at a certain standard, perhaps, I don't know, 1 to 3 or 1 to 4, perhaps we should keep leg side wides in for all the games.
Okay.
Panel umpires and supposedly better cricketers.
Okay, that's fine. Jimmy?
Yeah, I think obviously playing in tier 5, I would agree. I think leg side wides are a great thing. I think it encourages people to bowl straight, and it tries to improve the cricketers they are, because instead of just going, oh, we're going to bowl, get away with it, they have to concentrate, they have to work harder. But I agree, lower down, it maybe needs to be just looked at slightly.
Okay. All right. As close as you get to consensus there, which is good. Okay, we've touched on umpires there. Let's kind of dovetail into that. Obviously, slightly different requirement from the two leagues on umpires. Cherwell League has always been happy to encourage club umpires because it encourages people to get involved, and finding umpires is always difficult. The OCA came from a background of having neutral umpires for pretty much every game. We've had a variety of comments in both directions about this. Just interested if anyone, and I'm not asking you to name names or get too involved with specific decisions. It's more about the general concept of panel versus club. I think that the sort of standard running would be ideal panel, better than nothing club, worst case scenario, players umpiring themselves. I think we all want to avoid players umpiring the game if we possibly can. Thoughts? Stephen?
Mine's less so down there and in the lower divisions with the club umpires. I actually think it's a good idea. It helps our second team greatly. Mine, I've been in constant dialogue with Nielsen all season. We had 2 umpires that were part of the home counties panel. And I think that as a league, we either need to not have those, or almost not have those umpires involved in the Cherwell League, or not let them go so easily. It doesn't help Nielsen and the week that they get taken up to the home counties, and it doesn't help the clubs that they are affiliated with. I accept that we had those as our umpires, and that was our choice, and we knew the risk at the start of the season. But also to have umpires go up from the Cherwell League each week must be quite hard for Nielsen, and I just wondered whether there was a way that we could change that at all.
Nielsen, do you want to come in on that? Sure.
Well, I'd make 2 comments. One, we have more than once spoken with the home counties Premier League to try and get some sort of agreement, and their pretty flat refusal to, as far as they're concerned, they're entitled to select the best umpires, and that's what they will do. They do communicate with me very well, so it's not meant to be a criticism particularly, because the umpires themselves in most cases are ambitious to stand at the highest level they can. So it's unfortunate that the home counties take that attitude, but as I say, we have tried to talk to them about it and not really got anywhere. I had a second point, but I'm afraid it's gone. Age taking over. So if it comes back to me, I'll shout.
Russell?
Our umpires undoubtedly the biggest headache for us as a club. And if it wasn't for Nielsen's approach and attitude, it would completely drive us to distraction. Obviously, it depends on clubs. If you've got umpires, it's not a problem. If you don't have them, it's a really big problem. And I think we sort of had the issue that was just been touched on. I mean, we had 2 regular panel umpires available the vast majority of the weeks. One of them was taken by the home counties for all but 1 week. So effectively, didn't count. So we were having to replace him every week. Then in the lower divisions, whereas we see the incentive of the added point for providing a club umpire, there was a view that it was a bit discriminatory when us as a 4-team club, effectively having to find 5 umpires to fill all the slots. And if our third and fourth teams were playing against either a first or a second team, they're having to find 1 or 2. Obviously they're getting the 1 point and we're getting the 0. Not that it made any difference in terms of any league positions or anything like that. But it was just a feeling of those captains that they were being discriminated against because they had far less chance of finding an umpire than the club they're playing against that's only got 1 or 2 teams.
Okay.
Can I just ask a question? The issue, am I correct, is in finding an umpire. It's not that if you find one and nominate him to the panel, it's going to cost you 45 quid a week. Is the cost of it an issue to anybody?
Nielsen, for us, it's finding people. I mean, we've put adverts in Wisdom, we've put in local papers, and trying to get someone to join the club as an umpire, and then they get sent to far-flung parts of Oxfordshire, it's very difficult. You can get people to do club umpiring easier because they feel part of the team. They get a lift, they get a beer in the bar with the lads afterwards, and that's possible. But getting people on the panel is really difficult. You need umpires that really want to umpire to do it, and that's where we struggled.
Okay. Anyone else like to chip in on the umpires and strong views? Tim?
So umpires was probably the hot topic for most of our players this year. And I think that's because we're coming from the OCA, so we're used to essentially neutral umpires at every game. So we were kind of interested to see how that would play out. As someone who has to recruit, motivate umpires, and occasionally be an umpire myself, my sympathies naturally lie with the umpires. And certainly, we were the beneficiaries this year of the way, not only Nielsen's incredible flexibility and patience, but also the rules of the league, whereby we had a panel umpire who was taken ill unexpectedly. So suddenly mid-season, we had a big problem. And so we were grateful for not be fined millions of pounds or docked loads of points when there were weeks where we couldn't put out an umpire. Nonetheless, we remain the strongest possible advocates for as many panel umpires as possible at as many levels as possible. Our first team broadly had a season like any other. It was fine. A few decisions they might grumble about, etc., kind of noise, but generally fine. At the second 11, which is tier 6, and I use these words carefully, but I don't think it's an exaggeration. We had 3, possibly 4 games ruined by the umpiring. And I can't say that in the OCA we had very many games which I would describe in the same way. I won't name names and name teams and name it would be unfair. And I think there's credit to everyone involved that people kind of stayed calm, sucked it up and went home. But for it to happen once was one thing, but it did happen multiple times. And so I think if we all agree that neutral umpires where possible is the way to go and panel umpires is the way to go, I'd be interested in a constructive conversation around how we can get as many as possible. I think it's unrealistic to expect 2 at every game across the division, but every extra umpire, trained neutral umpire, I think will be of benefit to the league. So it's how can we work together to make that happen?
Can I pick up on that? I think that's a good constructive set of comments, Tim. I want to make one point that when you say my flexibility helped you avoid fines or anything, you had at least one umpire every week, so he was representing your first team. I didn't want any of the audience thinking, oh, hello, he's doing Oxford favours, because I don't. It was therefore the second and third team might not gain an umpire point and might not have an umpire. So that was where the flexibility came in. In terms of the situation with umpires ruining games, this is not something I'm aware of. So if this happens, I would encourage people to discreetly and in a controlled way let me know. If I find reports of the same umpire coming across my email, weekly or monthly even, I can do something about it, but I didn't know that was the case. So, do let me know.
And I'd like to put just a counterpoint to Tim's, really, that I've played a lot of games when we had club umpires and they were very good. We had some really good club umpires this year. And my feeling is if we press gang people onto going onto the panel who don't want to be panel umpires, how is that going to improve the standard of the umpiring?
Totally agree with you, Paul. Absolutely.
You will literally get clubs sending anybody to a game because they have to.
Yeah.
I think this is where my stance has changed in my years associated with the Cherwell League. That I was the biggest advocate when I was on the OCA of a neutral panel. And I now see neutral to mean something slightly different, whereas I consider the club umpires to be neutral umpires. Tim's right, there may be one or two who aren't very good, but we need to know about those. We need to do something about it. We have, I have umpired with a number of club umpires this year who've been excellent. I did one at Long Marsden to come back to Paul's point with an excellent club umpire. And Russell, who's on the meeting tonight, is the highest points scorer as far as the club umpires are concerned. And I would like to congratulate him in person now because we're on the same call for the standard of his umpiring throughout the season.
And as if by magic, Russell, you're next on.
Sorry, that was a bit unexpected, but thank you very much. Which is particularly interesting is I really don't enjoy doing it. And I'm only doing it because I can't find anybody else to do it. But I do take it very seriously when I do it. So that's really nice to know. Thank you very much. I was just answering Nielsen's question about it's definitely not the money. It's about finding the right people who want to do it. That is the real big problem, and one which I really don't have an answer to, because I end up doing it. But,
I think that's a fairly unanimous voice as well. In the two forums we've done so far, no one has yet moaned about the money. And I think even if the money was a problem, if we do get in a situation where we're not providing teas next year, well, there's your umpire's feet up. Yeah, we do understand that it's a difficult task, and hence I think the reason that the Cherwell League has always been keen to encourage anyone who will umpire, even if they prefer not to go and do a game where they don't know anyone. There's plenty of umpires that have been around long enough that they know people at every club. But when you're bringing someone new in, sometimes it is an added incentive for them to umpire at their own club with people they know. And certainly the club umpires, 2 or 3 club umpires that we used as a club, never did us any favours. And we're at pains not to do us any favours because they wanted to be seen to do the job properly. Okay, great. Right. Okay, here we go. Win, lose, draw. Welcome to the Cherwell League. How was it for you? Chris?
Whilst there's some players still at our club that have played Cherwell League cricket before, win, lose, draw, the vast majority haven't. I would probably say on the whole, the vast majority club players are not in favour of win, lose, draw. I think whilst on the whole we didn't have too many games where we had some games, let's say we had a few games where clearly the opposition was not intent on chasing down a score, and they were quite happily, even from the start, bat very defensively, play very defensive cricket, and with no intention to chase a total down that we had made set in the first innings. I think there may have been kind of sporadic instances of this in other divisions, but yeah, I think on the whole, most members are not in favour of win, lose, draw, but maybe that's partly because we're not used to playing it, and it is new, obviously, to many players at the club. So, yeah, I don't know. It's fairly split, I would say. Well, no, as I've said. As I've said, vast majority are probably not in favour of win, lose, draw, I think.
Okay.
I think.
Jimmy?
Being new to it this year, as a club, we we started off thinking that it was not a good idea, but as we got used to it and the more we played it, the players started to actually enjoy it. We did have a few teams that after we set a score, they were not interested in chasing. So whether there's a way of just altering the points so that if they're not going to chase or not even going to attempt to chase, then you get more out of it. But on the whole, I think as a new club to the Cherwell, we actually liked the change in the middle of the season. It actually brought a little bit something different.
Okay. Great, thanks. Barry?
A bit mixed from our guys really in. I think most were definitely a bit like Jim is against it from the start. They ended up having 2 or 3 really close games and almost last ball finishes in win-lose-draw early on, which helped. And then they had a couple where teams just batted out and it sort of waned their interest in it a bit. The bigger feedback on the win-lose-draw was a few grumbles around fielding for 53 overs, which coming from the OCA was quite a big step up. I think the bigger feedback we had around win-lose-draw was, again, the second team, really, playing in Division 8, where they both played 40 overs but still played win-lose-draw.
Yeah.
And that was some real feedback. And they had more games which were just dead batted for 40 overs where nothing was going to happen, where the first team did have quite a few more that were close finishes. But bit mixed feelings on it, really, across the club. Some enjoyed it, others didn't. And the length was probably the bigger feedback from the first team.
Okay. Tim?
Yep, so it's our first year as well playing it. Did a quick poll of players on our Facebook page this week and votes were mixed. Majority in favour of win-lose rather than win-lose-draw, but it wasn't uniform. I think in the interest of balance, my feedback would be in favour of win-lose-draw. We definitely had some games which ended up being exciting and went down to the wire because of win-lose-draw, which wouldn't have been exciting because of if it was win-lose. You know, people surrounding the bat, trying to take the last wicket, something to play for. So there was clear evidence there why some people might like the format and have good reason to like the format. On the other side, I think the reasons I would be concerned about it, not just, oh, I don't like it, would be threefold. One, my point earlier around the complication of the different formats. The fact that we're having split season and multiple teams at multiple levels with slightly different variations of rules made it complicated for both our players and umpires to understand the difference. So whether win-lose-draw is retained or whatever, even so, we would like the rules more unified where possible. So there's less of an exercise in trawling through the small print to spot the differences between the relevant leagues. Be point one. Concern two would be wet weather. On wet weather days or forecasts, it did feel like we'd be wasting our time going to the ground because the possibility of a result was significantly diminished without a Duckworth-Lewis calculation. And point three is this format just doesn't exist at higher levels. It's not what people see on TV. It's not what people see in the newspaper. For 2 innings cricket, absolutely, but not in a one day setting. And so for us, when we're trying to recruit from more youngsters, more diverse cricketers from a city environment, having to explain a format they haven't really heard of before is a barrier. I'm not saying people are turning around and leaving the club, but it's something we have to overcome. And so that's why we don't hate it. It's not stupid. There's no value in it. But overall, we have more concerns about it than we have positive things to say.
Steve.
We enjoyed the win, lose, draw. One thing I would say is that with the rule of run rate deciding the draw, it was worked out that if you bat first, you can eliminate a losing draw by declaring it 50 overs, which is tactical, but it's also very restrictive, and that's based on the toss. So maybe finding a way to reduce that inequality at the toss might work better. But win, lose, draw cricket, I think it teaches a different skill for players that do want to go higher to try and bowl a side out. Is something important for. Certainly, we've got a couple of youngsters in the Oxfordshire system that learning to bowl teams out is important if they want to go any further.
Gary couldn't be on the call tonight, but he did furnish me with about a gazillion pages worth of stats, which I won't bore you to death with. But there are one or two headlines in the win-lose side. I think we had one game where the side batting first in win-lose scored 458, and by general consensus, that game was over before a ball was bowled in the second inning. And I think the percentage of games which came down to a close finish was significantly higher in win-lose draw than it was in win-lose. And again, that's because a close finish might not necessarily involve you getting within 100 runs, but holding out for a draw. I think we've seen we've had lots of opinion come in both directions on this, and we want to make sure we're playing cricket people want to play. So it's important to get feedback on it. And I think it's a slightly unfair question to ask the clubs coming in from the OCA to some extent, because you've had 9 goes at it, and that's the extent of it so far. But okay, but thanks for your feedback. Anyone else want to chip in on that? Okay, well, a couple of points that were mentioned there, I just want to touch on as well. The length of matches generally, and coming back to Tim's point about consistency within the rules, and I'd sort of bracket these two together. Currently, we have 100 over matches 1 to 5, 90 over matches 6 and 7, 80 over matches in 8. In the win-lose draw matches in 6, 7, they are still 45-45, whereas there is a split in 1 to 5 where you can bat 53. Would it help, hinder, if we used a similar formula in those 45 matches and perhaps said you can bat 47-43? Or does that make it even more complicated? Tim?
Yeah, given I raised this, I should probably pick up on it. So the fact that some games were different lengths, I think most cricketers can pick up on that. It was the subtleties in the difference in laws which I think really confused people. So the 53-47 as opposed to the 45-45. The fact that the power plays with fielding restrictions worked slightly differently, that some of the calculations were slightly different, etc., etc. It was the kind of small print things you weren't really expected to see the difference. Whether overs could be carried over from lost in the first innings into the second one if you bowled them out, like really subtle things which don't come up every week, and it's like, oh, that's not the same in this one versus the rules they have. I'm sure it's been done for good reason. It's been thought through, whatever. But the differences seem to have such marginal gains. But actually, forget our idiot players who weren't really paying attention anyway. Our umpires who were umpiring at different levels, the fact they had to be all over this, I felt a bit sorry for them.
Okay. tier 8, one or two people with teams on tier 8. One of the comments we've had is that 40 overs isn't enough to bowl a team out. Any sympathy with that? Any scorn to be poured on that?
Our second struggled to bat 40 overs most weeks, to be fair, Ian. So, I don't think increasing the overs at a lower level at the 8 would be a great idea. So particularly with trying to get youngsters and what have you playing, it's hard enough sometimes getting them out of 20 over cricket into 40. And you're having to make sure that they are doing things. Obviously, you get the odd game where they don't, and then you only need a couple like that where it becomes really long, and you could lose a few.
Okay. Yeah. Any other thoughts? We need to push in that area?
40 overs more than long enough to bowl our guys out, and I think appreciative of a shorter game. I think at that level.
I think most of the comments were we couldn't bowl a side out in 40, as opposed to we couldn't survive 40. But fair enough. Yeah. Okay. Well, gentlemen, that's yeah. Sorry, Rupert.
Ian, just one feedback from our Division 8 side. Our 4th team was limit the number of overs down in Division 8, so that they just think allowing somebody to bowl a third of the over in win-lose draw was probably too many, because they thought that down there trying to get more youngsters involved in the game. So if somebody can bowl that many, it just made it more difficult, for captains to all do that. They just felt it should be similar to win-lose, that they can only bowl 10 overs max.
Okay. Tim?
I have a general question, not on any topic, but applies to all topics, which is around what the intentions are regarding AGMs and voting. So obviously things were put together very quickly, and there was good reason for why, OCA clubs came in, and then we were given a set of rules and we worked with them. But in terms of for future year, are matters such as these changes going to go to club vote, or is there a different plan?
Well, it'll run largely the way that we've always run it, which the forums are our first port of call to gauge opinion. Now, if we get a large groundswell of opinion in one direction that requires a change in the rules, then the committee will propose a change, which will go to the AGM and will be decided on a majority vote. On subjects where opinion seems to be equally divided or split, it's unlikely that we would propose a change, but there is a facility for any club to propose a change to the rules at the AGM. Now, in order to do that, you need to construct a properly worded rule that doesn't run across every other rule in the Constitution. You need the support of 1/4 of the member clubs, which I accept is quite a lot. But if you can't get the support of 1/4 of the clubs for your motion, there's no chance you're going to get the support of half of them at the AGM in any case. So it's part and parcel of the lobbying process, if you like. And anything that's properly submitted to the committee by, I think, the 30th of September can go on the AGM papers. As I say, if there is a groundswell of opinion, and if you come to the committee and say, look, I think I can get support for this, this is what I'm suggesting. If we are already thinking something along those lines, we'll come straight back to you and say, well, look, this is what we're proposing to put to the AGM. And you won't have to rally around 22 clubs. It'll go on the papers and then it'll be a majority vote. So anything is up up for grabs. If it's a constitutional change, it requires a 2/3 majority at the AGM. If it's a rule change, it's a straight majority. So all things can be changed. What we look to do is gauge the opinion from the forums and then look at what tweaks we think we need to do. Now, at this point, I can't tell you what that is. We've got one forum still to go, and we'll have a committee meeting on Thursday, at which point we will look at any changes that we think need to be made, and then some poor mug, that'll be me, will be sent off to draft an appropriate motion for the AGM. You'll get notice of those motions 6 weeks beforehand, before the AGM. So you'll have plenty of opportunity to poll your club and find out what the view is within the club, and then vote appropriately at the meeting.
That makes total sense. Thank you, Ian. So end of September, essentially, we'd have to pull something together.
Yeah, if you want to propose something end of September, but I would suggest rather, and this is not us just trying to be a spy on the camp, that if it's something you think has got a lot of support, then it's worth talking to us, because if we're already doing it, you don't need to do the work. We'll tell you what the motion that we're proposing is. You may look at that and go, it's not going far enough, I want to do more than one. Not a problem. And if you get the appropriate levels of support that comes into me, and as I say, it doesn't run roughshod over everything else, then it will go on the papers for club vote.
Makes sense. Thanks.
No worries. Well, I was about to say, gentlemen, I've covered everything that was on my sheet, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're done. If there's anything on any topic that you would like to raise, make us aware of, think about, now's your chance.
Ian, you mentioned earlier about promotion and relegation. Have you any more thoughts? Teams
Yes.
up, teams down.
Sorry, yes. Okay, so for those in the Chairwell League, they will be very used to each year there would be some applications from the OCA or potentially some other leagues. And sometimes that team would bring in one or two, maybe two clubs would come in with 3 or 4 teams. And as I said earlier, they would be slotted in at the level that we thought they fitted for their playing level, which meant that by the time you got down to Division 9 in a linear setup, you might have 5, 6, 7 teams getting relegated. The bringing together of the two leagues has attracted plenty of attention from outside of our geographical area, or, well, not actually outside our geographical area, but outside our league. And we have had 2 new clubs who have applied, who will be put to the AGM for election. The committee have done their due diligence on these clubs, and they hit the ground standards, they hit the constitutional setups, etc. We're happy. Ultimately, it will be up to you guys to vote them in. But if they come in, that will be 4 teams, and 3 existing clubs within the league have asked to add an additional team. And in those circumstances, that doesn't generally go to a vote if an existing club is in the league, providing they hit the ground standards, and we are happy to allow them to come in. That means 7 new sides. And so what we're looking to do for 2022 is, rather than fit them in and shove a multitude of sides down, we're looking at an additional division at Tier 3, which will involve promoting teams from Tier 4 to fill the spaces. And that then creates room in the middle. At various levels, these new teams will come in. Now, we'll present this to you in more detail, but as it currently looks, all of the promotion that we suggested at the start of the season will take place as stated. So a minimum of 3 teams will be promoted from all of the lower divisions. But in the higher divisions, where we were expecting to be promoting slightly less than that, we will actually be promoting more. In consequence, we like to relegate as needed, not vindictively. And so of the 14 divisions above tier 8, we are now going to be in a position where we will only need to relegate one club from each of those divisions, all the way down from 1 to 6C, 7C, sorry.
Ian.
Yeah.
It will depend on whether Cumnor go to the home counties or not.
Well, it will, although the only issue now with Cumnor is their safe hands, and apparently that's cleared. They have their appeals been accepted.
They've got I believe they have a meeting tomorrow night or Thursday night, club meeting.
Right. But as all things being equal, if, as we expect, Cumnor go up to the home counties, no one is coming down from the home counties, providing they've all hit their safe hands management system requirements, etc. And in any normal year, that would normally mean that in the Cherwell it was 2 up, 1 down. But this will allow us the facility to relegate just one team from every division and to promote, I think it runs at, there'll be between 10 and 12 will go up from tier 4 into the new tier 3. And then that number going up will gradually reduce as we filter in new sides. But even all the way down to tier 8, 3 will go up from each of the tier 8 divisions, which was what we promised at the start of the season. So on balance, it looks like a system that works for most people. No one is going to get relegated that wasn't at least thinking they might be, and a few teams are going to get promoted that perhaps hadn't realised they were in that position. Barry, I've got your hand up. Sorry, I've been talking all over it.
That's fine. I've just taken it down. It was just I'd seen a number of comments about reorganisations, and it was just a question around that you just covered in fine detail. Thank you.
Well, at the moment, this is a sort of plan. We're still waiting on a confirmation on Cumnor. We've all still got to ratify it ourselves at a committee meeting. The cricket committee's made a recommendation, but we wanted to just allay any fears. We've had a few people come on say, "Are we going to get relegated?" Well, we never actually know that until the very last minute. But hopefully, the answer to that will be no, unless you finish bottom, in which case there's not a terribly persuasive argument for staying up.
There'll be a 3A and a 3B, will there?
That is the plan. Yeah, that is the plan at the moment. So that it'll be 1, 2, 3A, 3B, 4A, 4B, 5 ABC, and then ABC all the way down to 8. Anything else that anyone wanted to raise, talk about, suggest? In which case, gentlemen, I congratulate you. You'll be. Oh, sorry, Jimmy.
Just a quick one. A couple of the lads from our club have just, they noted down about, obviously with the change of the formats to win, lose, draw. I know. What's the Cherwell League's view on a coloured kit for just the win, lose? Obviously we're new to this, so they're asking questions, and I just thought I'd ask the question now.
The Cherwell League's view. The Cherwell League doesn't really have a view. We did sort of just broach it about 12 months ago, maybe 24 months ago, when the home counties started it. And at that point, our biggest concern was cost for the clubs. Because when the home counties introduced it, the home counties clubs came back and said, cost is a big issue, because they were going to supply the kit for the players, or the players were going to have to go out and buy new shirts, new trousers, dark coloured pads, etc., etc. Unless someone comes in and suggests it with a significant amount of support, I wouldn't see it being something that's likely to happen. The other slight issue
we also play with a red ball.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ian. Yeah, beat me to it. We play with a red ball. Might be difficult.
And to get a pink or white ball that will go 50 overs is quite an expensive ball. The coloured balls tend not to have the same durability as the red ones. And the other option is play with 2. Well, that immediately doubles the cost.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's fair. I just thought I'd ask the question because obviously they've asked me, and
I would say not imminent.
okay.
Russell.
Thanks, Ian. For the teams that are going to be relegated,
Yes.
how is it going to be decided which division in the lower tier they go into?
Okay, so we've had a little play around with this at the moment, but until we confirm exactly who's going where, or who's going to which tier, we won't be able to do it. The basic plan will be the teams will come down, we will establish the tier of 30. We will then use the very scientific method of bringing up a Google map and sticking 30 pins in it and looking at which geographical lines make the most sense. So we're not siloing this as north, south, and west or anything. Each division will split slightly differently. Now, you were actually very unfortunate with your threes because we're still slightly short of density of clubs to be able to guarantee regionalisation. And as you say, you ended up trekking across the country. It's quite possible that you would change division, and you might even change division with the club that you trekked halfway across the country to play, but not play them next year, because the divisions will sort themselves out in a more geographically sensible way. So each tier will be looked at individually, and then the best geographical lines drawn for that tier.
Right, thank you very much.
No problem. Any more for any more? In which case, gentlemen, I congratulate you on being the shortest forum thus far, and thank you for it from the bottom of my heart. I went back over the videos over the weekend, and that's 8 hours of my life I was never getting back in a hurry. Okay, obviously the forums are where we try to get the feedback. That doesn't mean you can't drop us a line at any point or pick up the phone if you want to chat something through. Despite the how was that described? Patronising, condescending, and sarcastic tone that I sometimes adopt in my emails. I'm more than happy to pick the phone up and speak to anyone at any point, and you will normally get a sensible reply. So, unless anyone's got anything else, gentlemen, I will free you up for the rest of the evening.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you, guys.
Thanks very much for attending, gentlemen.
Yeah, thanks for being
Thank
here.
you.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
And Leslie.
Bye now.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.